Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. This afternoon I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K episode 37, Hidden Hunters, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to the other episodes, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Last month was episode 36. Yes, the battle for Axum continues, right? In space and on the surface, of course. Wait. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to remember what happened. What happened in episode 36? Yes, the Canoness Superior with her Paragon armor has been literally destroying the clone troops left, right, and center until some Jedi came in there to try and stop her, and they had a duel, if I can say that, between the Canoness Superior and 3 Jedi, or was it 4 Jedi? Yeah, they did not succeed. The Jedi did not succeed. The Canoness Superior continued pushing further against the clone troops. However, the clones, with the command of Admiral Windu, had a plan. They had an organized retreat, making way for a vessel that Ahsoka Tano and her clones were on to crash land onto the spot where the Imperium of Man forces were gathering and pushing against the clone troops. And it was a terrible situation for the Imperium of Man forces. They were quashed by this crash landing vessel. With the help of Jevona, if I'm not mistaken, she was using her Psyker powers to direct it, to crash land onto the Imperium of Man forces. The Canoness Superior survived due to Nerva and her Imperial Knight protecting her from the destruction. So yeah, the Canoness Superior survived. However, she was heavily damaged, wounded, and she could no longer continue the fight. And to add more problems to the Imperium of Man, the Gene Stealer cult has arrived. One of the Tyranids tried to attack the Canoness Superior, and luckily her Sisters of Battle, her adopted daughter, came in to save her life. And also Saint Lazarus came in there with his forces to rescue the entire situation. And now they've all retreated back to the Basilica, and they're going to be making their last stand in that facility. On the clone troop side, the rebels of Axum have been joining the fight as well. They tried to beat the Imperium of Man forces, but of course the Canoness Superior with her armor, she was deadly. She was really just overpowering, and they really could not do anything against someone like her with her armor, but they really did try. And now this is a situation in terms of the civilians being infiltrated by the Gene Stealer cult, and we don't know how far or how deep the infiltration has gotten with the rebels of Axum. I don't know how many civilians are now part of the Gene Stealer cult. I guess we'll just have to figure that out as we continue on with more episodes. But basically the battle on the surface has become complicated. There's a hidden third force that might jeopardize everything, and that's the Gene Stealer cult. And then you have the Imperium of Man. They've been backed into a corner, and the clone troops have also, I think they've reached almost the limit of what they can do and how much they can contribute in terms of combat against the Imperium of Man forces, because they've lost a lot of people as well. So yeah, the Jedi, the clones are still intact, but battle weary, if I can say that. And the rebels are here too, but they're not as organized as the clones. And yeah, it's a 3-way tussle, if I can say that, on the surface. Gene Stealer, Imperium of Man, and the Galactic Republic. In space, I think Roller is winning it. Roller is winning it for now. We'll just have to wait and see what the Oracle team does about this, in terms of the information that they've received on what happened to the Pride of the Core. And yeah, that's about it. That's all that's been happening in episode 36. Yeah. Let us continue with episode 37, Hidden Hunters. 3, 2, 1, go.
Broken my chains. I will never again have a master. I will never let another rule over me. I will never return to the Empire.
The rebels were cheering. Hollow displayers flashing and speakers blasting music among the massive, disordered and armed crowd. One of 3 massive armies composed of local Axumites which had converged on the Basilica battlegrounds. Though they were the farthest away, located near the tail end of the crashed Providence class, the smallest of the 3 large groups, and the one which had seen the least amount of combat, they still celebrated the victory with audacious vigor. Young men and women fired their weapons skyward, cheering through the beating, thumping music. Others danced in the streets, exalting the end of the Imperial occupation. Many of the older members of the crowd busied themselves guarding the scores of captured Imperial prisoners they had taken.
Are you guys not celebrating too early? I mean, the Imperium of Man is still there. The Basilica is still there. They are preparing themselves for, a last stand. They are preparing themselves while you guys are partying. Oh gosh. Anyways, let's continue.
A few walking about and distributing the confiscated weapons to those who needed or wanted them. What combat there had been had not lasted long, and under the leadership of the man who had rallied and brought them here, victory had been rapid and relatively bloodless. Though only a quarter of those present were aware of the fact that, had it not been for this figure, they would have wound up aimlessly wandering around the streets of Axum like so many other mobs which had taken to the city. But no less would have been expected of him, for the common word among the masses was that this man was a Jedi. That was what Sando had been sent to find out.
A Jedi? Okay, which Jedi? I don't remember a Jedi helping, or should I say, commanding the civilians to fight against the Imperium of Man. I don't remember any Jedi.
Himself and 9 other clones having been sent by Master Obi-Wan Kenobi to discover the truth, and if the man was of the Order, to reconnect him with the command structure. But as the clones were rapidly discovering, finding any one person in this mess was nearly impossible. They formed a loose wedge with Sando in the lead, carefully but firmly making their way through the crowd as they searched for the man matching the description they had been given. At the very least, the rowdy mob was not sore at the sight of them, Sando feeling an out-of-place elation as he navigated through the many young fighters who had come out to support the Republic's liberation of Axum. They cheered even more loudly as he and his brothers came into sight, thanking them as they passed, slapping their backs and shoulders, all smiling while they jostled the clones with their gratitude.
This is reminding me of Star Wars, The Return of the Jedi. After the second Death Star was destroyed with the Emperor on board. And, they would show us celebrations that are happening across the galaxy. How they would also show, like, a Coruscant and, people celebrating in the streets, fireworks, and all that type of cheery stuff. However, the Empire's infrastructure, the Empire's influence, still existed in the galaxy after the death of the Emperor and the second Death Star. Just like here, with the civilians of Axum are celebrating, however, the Imperium of Man is still here. So the work is not done. And that is why I'm asking myself, why are you guys celebrating now? Why are you guys celebrating now? The enemy is still there in that huge Basilica fortress type installation. They are preparing themselves to fight against you guys while you guys are drinking alcohol, dancing, revelry, just enjoying yourselves. You're enjoying yourselves too early for my liking. You're celebrating too early for my liking. Especially when the job is not done.
I could get used to this. We're heroes! Upper said into their squad comm, waving and pointing at the crowd around them. Don't let it go to your head, Up. These folks may be smiling now, but the public is fickle as a lightsaber. The moment you get comfortable with all their praise is the moment, Hardway began to say before being cut off in the comm by Sando. Give it a rest, Hardway. After all we've been through today, this is the least that we deserve. Enjoy it while it lasts, he said, shaking hands with one very enthusiastic Bith freedom fighter. They would activate their helmet speakers to ask the crowd questions from time to time, though just being heard through the bleating music was difficult, much less getting back intelligible answers. The floating drone and droid speakers which hovered over their heads blasted out their heavy beats, so loud that Sando's visor trembled in sync with them. Many of these devices also bore flashing lights and projected holograms as they flew and floated over the heads of the Axumites. Saluting troopers, the flag of Axum, the wheel of the Republic, and many words and slogans like freedom, victory, and down with the Imperium floated high or danced low among the jostling crowds. Combined with the smoke all around, which reflected the lights oddly, and the soft thunder coming from the burning sky above, the environment formed itself into an aesthetic which struck Sando as one he would have only expected to find in a fever dream. Like a party held at the end of the universe, the young and the old and all the living, rallying under the dying stars to face the end of time as an army of one.
Well, I guess you could say that if Tar Weiler's plan comes into fruition and he destroys this planet, at least you'll be having one last hurrah before the end. I guess you could also say that. So yeah, have your party now and die later, I guess.
He shook his head, refocusing on his task and turning when he heard someone call for him over the comm. Hey Sando! I think I got something, said Upper. Sando bowed his head respectfully to the person he had been trying to speak with, awkwardly breaking away and then doing his best to push past the convulsing, cheering press that stood between him and his brother. When he finally made it, Sando found Upper standing with an Ithorian, the large alien pumping his fist into the air and cheering his own chant of, "For the Republic! For the Republic!" through the loud, head-mounted translation device which was converting the groans and moans his species could emit into basic. "What's up, Up?" Sando asked through his comm. "This guy here has some interesting intel. Listen," Upper said in response before turning to the cheering alien and tapping his shoulder, getting his attention before switching to his helmet speaker and yelling through the crowd and music. "Tell him what you told me," Upper directed, pointing to Sando and taking a moment to make sure the Ithorian, who seemed certainly intoxicated, understood who he was gesturing towards. The Ithorian rebel nodded his broad head after a moment and came closer to Sando, speaking in a loud, audible voice thanks to the speakers in his translation device. "Your buddy is looking for the boss, right? Well, I don't know where that guy went, but I know that he didn't show up alone. When he came up and found our group, He had a few people with him already, like 2 or 3 who then hung out real close to him, the Ithorian said. So he wasn't alone. He came with more people? Sando asked, the Ithorian flapping his head again in response. Like who? Sando asked. Like her, over there, the Ithorian said, pointing towards a nearby loose crowd of dancers. Sando squinted at the moving, waving group of various species and styles, all of them swinging their limbs and shaking their bodies as bright, holographic projected lights swept over them in various hues. Which one? He asked the alien. The one that's in black with the blonde hair, the small one, the Ithorian said in response, pointing more intensely as if his long finger could lead the way alone. Following the given description, Sando located the one he was talking about. She was a human woman, or girl perhaps. It was a little hard to tell. She was thin as a whip, her black bodysuit and oversized black trench coat barely disguising that as she danced. Her head was a tangle of mid-length blonde hair, which she waved about without any care as she moved and jerked her body to the beat which surrounded the crowd. The ball-shaped droid above the dancers strobing her with red, green, and white. So you think she knows where the leader is? Sando asked. The Ithorian shrugged in response. I don't know, maybe? She's one of your best bets, I'd bet, he added. Sando nodded his head and extended his hand, taking and shaking the Ithorian's. Thank you, you've helped a lot, he said to the grateful rebel before turning and angling his way towards the dancing crowd. He cut a path in, drawing a few mild scowls as he walked to where she was, near the center, creating some room for himself. Up close, he could see she was indeed no child, but certainly not entirely well either. The woman looked to be about halfway to emaciation, with dark bags heavy under her eyes. Though she did not quite have hollow cheeks or an overtly sickly pallor, something about her struck the clone as undeniably off.
Maybe she's, a different type of humanoid alien creature that looks like this. Yeah, I don't know.
Feeling which doubled when the soldier tapped her shoulder and saw her stark blue eyes open and focus on him. The stare she fixed him with sent shivers down his spine, stunning him long enough for her to begin speaking before he could. I'm kind of dancing right now, the odd blonde said to him, her voice flat and listless. She closed her too bright eyes again and continued her movements, not that she had ever actually stopped.
Actually, I thought maybe she might be a Sith, but because AFanWithTooMuchTime did say that she has blue eyes, I'm like, no, okay, maybe she's not a Sith. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just the genetics of her species of humanoid alien kind.
Despite looking thin, pale, and sickly, she moved with a coordination and even grace, which Sando would have thought beyond someone in such apparently bad health. Then again, what did he really know about those kinds of things?
Yeah, how do clones spend their free time, Do they sing? Do they dance? Do they play musical instruments? Do they play chess? In the Bad Batch, whenever we saw, clones congregating, we always saw them congregating in the cafeteria and eating and talking amongst each other. But I don't think I remember seeing them ever, doing like sports, some sort of activity that doesn't involve, shooting or going to war against the droids or anything like that. So yeah, I'm wondering, what do they do in their free time? The clones. Yeah.
Pushing those thoughts aside, he doubled down his focus on what he had come here for. Right. Sorry to interrupt that activity, ma'am, but I'm looking for someone. And word has it, you may know where he is. Sando said, to no apparent effect, the wisp of a woman continuing to dance and completely ignoring him. Sando frowned. What was her deal? She was the first person he'd seen in this entire crowd who was not beaming smiles at him and trying to clap his back or shake his hand, which was odd enough. But her accent also struck Sando as strange, but familiar at the same time. Where had he heard that tempo of speech before? Well, regardless of where he had heard it before, the one thing he knew was certain was that he was not leaving empty-handed. "Hey!" Sando said more loudly, reaching out and grabbing her wrist. The blonde's luminous blue eyes flashed open all at once, and her body went rigid. Sando abruptly felt himself fall victim to the same sense one gets when a step on a long, dark staircase is missed. The woman's eyes bored into him, suddenly intense and holding within them the essence of a single word: murder.
Sando, let her go. Let her go. Right now.
The thin woman jerked, and Sando staggered back, released from the brief, paralytic instant her eyes had locked him into as he let go of her wrist. Only then did he notice the large shape who had joined them. He was a tall man, built like a bear, his tight green and white work fatigues pulled taut over obvious muscle. Over that, the man wore a black trench coat, holding a bright pink bag in his right hand and grasping the blue-eyed woman's other arm with his left. It was only then that Sando saw that her hand had reached into an inner pocket of her trench coat, clutching something there, but restrained from withdrawing it by the
Must have been a gun.
balled fist which had wrapped around her bicep. Both their limbs trembled with strain, thick, bunched muscles somehow struggling against the tight cord of the woman's arm, revealing that her incredibly lithe demeanor belayed a truly terrifying strength. "Ease up, Heck. I got your damn sugar, so cut me a break and don't start any more fights. At least, not without my permission, okay?" The newcomer said, speaking in a thick, low worker accent. The woman turned to face him in a violent rush, and, in response, the man seemed to try to slap her across the face with the brightly decorated pink bag. The thin blonde woman intercepted the strike with her other hand, now free since Sando had released it, snatching and twisting the bag out of his grip, a sudden grin spreading manically across her pale features as she began to tear at the top of the packaging. "Thank you, Sam," she chirped happily as the tall man turned to look at Sando. Sando's eyes moved from the woman as she thrust her hand into the bag to the newly arrived man, looking up at him and knowing him instantly for who he was.
That lady is a bit strange. Or maybe more than a bit.
Samael, I assume? The clone said, extending his hand out. The man reached out with his own arm, clasping the clone with a limb that was lined with bright white scars. He gripped Sando's hand tightly and gave a stiff nod.
Samael, long time no see. Agent, spy of the Imperium of Man. So you're the one who's been leading these people. And just write your name here. You've been the one that's been leading these people to this spot. You are the leader of this rebel group. How? How do you become the leader? And what is the purpose of that? Why are you doing that? There must be a motive. Are you going to bring them all here so that they can be easily killed by the Imperium of Man forces when they begin their counter-attack or something? Yeah. Wow, this is surprising. So who's the lady that he's working with? Who is she? Is she also some sort of spy or an assassin? Yikes.
Yeah, that's me. I assume you're from the Republic, correct? Said the large man, to which Sando nodded back. Aye, sir. I am. I was sent here by Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi to verify the rumors that you are a member of the Jedi Order, and to bring you to field command if you are," Sando said, straightening a bit but not saluting yet. The man rubbed the bristling stubble that had been growing over his pale face, flexing his jaw for a moment as he paused to think. "Well, I can tell you this. I'm no Jedi, just a man with a keen interest in this fight. But I'll still come with you to your command center, if you'd have me," he said. The man spoke as he reached into his trench coat and drew out a thin, white-rolled narcotic tube, sticking the butt in his mouth and lighting it up with the clink of a metal lighter he flicked open with his other hand.
This is not good. The moment he enters into that command structure, he's going to analyze everything. Every single nook and cranny. He's going to see who are the strong ones, who are the weak ones, who's in command, the layout of the command bunker or facility. He's going to document everything that he sees there, and he's going to relay it back to the Imperium of Man. Wow.
A deep drag of the stuff, he exhaled a cloud of gray smoke into the air above them. The obscure phantom haze was immediately targeted by the floating droid which was flying over their heads, which projected several colors and images into the drifting cloud. The clone paused to consider for a moment, but then nodded. "You may not be a Jedi, but if you're head honcho here, then I think it's still for the best if we take you back so the generals can coordinate with you. Did you want to bring anyone else?" Sando asked, watching as Samael turned to regard the thin blonde woman behind him. She was crunching and slurping noisily over the bead-like hard candies her thin, gloved hands were shoveling into her mouth.
Is this an AI picture? Yeah, because the eyes and the eyebrows and the forehead, I don't know what that is protruding out of the forehead like that. Yeah, that is a bit weird.
Though, luckily, the bag she was drawing them out from seemed to be very full. She looked ecstatic, as though the sugar she was devouring was the equivalent to a 5-star meal, and Samael seemed to scoff and shake his head lightly at the antics. "Heck, I'm leaving for a while to do some work. I'll be back later. Go find that man we met, Jimson, if you run out of sugar. No fecking fighting, heck. I'm very serious. If you think you need a fight, come find me first," he said, shaking a finger at his distracted companion, who only nodded and mumbled a vague affirmative in response. Sighing, shaking his head wearily, he turned back to Sando, his hard, dark eyes resting heavily on the clone. "All right then, let's go meet your generals."
That is bad. That is bad, bad, bad. I'm telling you, Samael is going to really just assess everything that the clones and the Jedi are doing, and then he's going to relay it back to probably Saint Lazarus. Oh, this is bad. Okay.
Ayla had her eyes closed, her body curled in the back of the transport, sleeping soundly, if uneasily, under the watch of Captain Graves.
Oh, she has been exhausted, actually. Yeah, she needed some time to rest after all the battles that she's been going through.
The clone commando sat on a container full of Bacta rebreathers and medical supplies, most of which had been used up. He had been attached to the 327th Star Corps for nearly the entire war, had served alongside General Secura countless times. And yet, Graves had never seen her this exhausted before. He had been receiving status updates from the front near the Basilica, but had restrained himself from rousing Ayla to inform her. She needed this sleep more than any of them, especially since he knew that she would insist on taking a personal, hands-on approach to the retrieval of the other Jedi, whether they were secure or in trouble. "Captain, 40 minutes until we arrive at their last recorded location." The pilot radioed back to him. "Aye, good. Keep us on course, Leadhead. I'll wake the General when we're 10 minutes out," he he sent back through the comm in his helmet. Sir, just so you know, there's a storm front coming up on us. Looks like a nasty squall, and it's got odd readings coming out from it. Might be a chemical storm caused by the fighting, said the pilot. How much will it delay us to go around it? Captain Graves asked. Roughly 30, maybe 40 minutes, Leadhead responded. The commando paused to think, weighing the options in his hands. It had taken them 4 hours just to get out this far, adding 40 minutes on the way there, then another 40 on the way back. Does it look like too much trouble to fly through? He asked. Not at all, sir. I think if we seal up the gunships and use the environmental controls, we should be fine. It's not melting buildings or anything, Leadhead reported back. Okay, then we'll risk it. Fly us through. General Windu demanded we get the rest of the order here as soon as possible, and I don't feel like ticking that Jedi off, said Graves. Wait, exclaimed a voice from behind him. Graves turned his helmed head to regard General Secura, who now stood, awake and at his side. The captain looked cool and collected from the outside, but all he had managed to do was keep from jumping or wincing at her sudden appearance. Heart bumping in his chest and only slowly calming as the Jedi walked past him and activated the door controls. The enormous wall door of the Lat gunship slid open to the whistling winds outside. Tranquility becoming chaos, a chaos Ayla pushed herself into, hanging out of the ship by one arm and one leg as she angled herself to look into their path, and the storm they were approaching. Graves could see it too, or rather, its wide flanks reaching out to either side of the horizon. Something about it twisted his guts. And it wasn't just the odd red coloring of the clouds and rain, or the serpentine crimson lightning which swam through both. A moment later, he realized what it was which he found so unnerving. The storm was moving, rushing towards them, even as they rushed towards it. Faster and faster, growing to either side more and more, they approached at what appeared to be a gaining speed.
This seems like it's something with warp influence around it. Yeah, something that has to deal with the warp. I'm not entirely sure what. Yeah.
Ayla swung herself back in, face clouded, obviously troubled. General? Captain Graves asked. She snapped her eyes up at him. Order the pilot to go around. I don't want any of our gunships even touching that storm for a moment. She said. Aye, General, but you should know, it will delay a significant... Graves began to say. I don't care! Do it, Captain! She suddenly snapped, eyes wide and shot through with red veins. Graves snapped a hard salute and tapped his helmet comm in response. Led, bring us about. Signal all the other gunships to follow us. The General wants us to go around the storm, with a special emphasis on not touching it. Copy that? He said. Copy, Graves. Course correcting now. The pilot calmed back, banking their gunship as Graves went to close the door, but was held up by the outstretched hand of Ayla Secura. Before them, they could clearly see the storm, whipping and whirling wickedly, the sheets of rain and streaks of rotting red lightning almost appearing to outline odd, horrific shapes amid the chaotic downpour. It hurt the clone's eyes just to stare into it at all. But the General did not even blink, her own eyes wide and swirling with the reflections of the tempest before them.
Secura, don't look too deeply into this storm or whatever this thing is. You're going to be corrupted. Yeah, don't look too much.
Muttered something, and Graves stepped forward. What was that, General? He asked into the wind. She did not turn to regard him as she answered, nearly breathless, but audible. I've seen this storm before, she said in a shuddering whisper. Graves knew not how he heard her, but he did. Where? Graves called, but she did not answer this time, though he could see that, whatever the answer was, it was wreaking havoc behind her eyes. Vague, repressed memories she had only recently burned away began to swell behind the fabric of her mind, burgeoning and growing like horrific hidden tumors among her thoughts. Ayla had seen this storm before, had seen it from inside, but not with her own eyes. This was one of the memories that the Inquisitor she had faced had forced into her brain, choking her with segments of his own fell existence, and his encounter with this storm had been one of the strangulating fingers he had used to overwhelm her. The Jedi Master staggered, leaning against the side of the open door, one hand reaching up to cradle her head. From within her pulsing, aching skull, a hailing storm of repressed memories were welling, seeking to break free and gradually succeeding. The lapses in her defenses allowed some of those damaging moments to re-enter her thoughts, like titans slipping their chains to invade the sanctum of her mind. All the while, she was assailed from without by a cacophony of psychic voices, unending howls and screams from beasts and monsters far beyond her ken and knowledge.
You have to try, Secura, to block out these images and memories that Tarweiler has been giving to you. You have to try, or else you'll be consumed.
Jedi had hoped to stave this moment off, at least until the current battle was concluded. But her proximity to this storm, whatever it was, had forced the confrontation between herself and her flash-burned thoughts to occur much sooner than she had anticipated. "Keep us clear of the storm and on the path for the mission," Ayla said as she closed the door herself, straightening as she pressed the button and walked on shaky legs to the back of the transport, sitting and crossing her legs. "I will be unable to command for a time. Until I awaken from this myself, I am not to be disturbed. And you are in command until I resume my post. Understood?" she would ask as she straightened her back. "Aye, General. Good luck," he said with a nod. She smiled briefly, but then stiffened her features and closed her eyes. And then she opened her mind, and every box she had sealed within. It was at last time she reckoned with the darkness that foul Imperial had thrown over her. And here, guarded by her clones and away from the din of battle, she knew she had a better chance at victory against it. A better chance, but she also knew there was no certainty. Taking a breath in, she recalled the words of Master Yoda, and slowly released her held breath in the form of a whispered mantra. "Do or do not," she muttered. "There is no try."
Do or do not, there is no try. Huh. Okay, Secura. There is no try. You have to do it. You have to. Oh no. Oh no. Here we go. Here we go. Kombirr. You cannot fall in love with this lady. You cannot fall in love with this lady. Okay? You cannot. Jevona, you have to die. Okay, lady? You have to die.
Kombirr's head was pounding, his body feeling sick, aching all over, but from a few particular places with specifically agonizing pains. He blinked, glad he had been wearing his helmet, and untangled himself from the wreckage he was surrounded by. The armored Axumite tried to remember what had happened to get himself here, and, very slowly, his memory began to return to him, gushing slowly back into his thoughts with each pain-ridden beat of his heart. They had been hauling the Providence class, and Jevona had been doing something which had allowed them to actually successfully lift the wrecked hulk. with the help of many other ships.
Wait, where's your mother? She was on board the vessel that you're on, right? That Kombirr is on with Jevona, right? Yeah. So hopefully she's also okay.
All the way to where it was needed. Well, almost all the way. Just as they had entered their final approach, the Imperials had begun returning fire from the ground. And Kombirr's ship had been one of the many which had been struck out of the sky by their lethal volleys. He could hear the ghostly sound of the screaming alarms, now all silent. Could remember the sound of his mother's panicked voice as she warned them all to brace for impact. Their ship being torn to ribbons by a cascade of flak fire which quickly overwhelmed their civilian shields. They toppled end over end out of the air, engines combusting as they did and flinging the freighter further, faster, their ship smashing into the ground and flipping like a coin. Meanwhile, they were trapped inside the tumbling and turning vessel, everything ripping apart around them as Kombirr, Venora, and Jevona were tossed and thrown about in their chairs. Everything came to a jarring, violent halt once the ship finally crashed to a smoking rest, less than 300 meters from the Basilica gates. His own chair had come entirely loose of the floor at some point, leaving Kombirr covered in metallic detritus and sitting at an awkward angle. The young Axumite heir knew not how long he had languished there, unconscious and immobile within the burning wreckage of his family's ship. But he did know enough to guess that it was probably for too long. He carefully pulled himself free of the chair he had been bound to, and the wreckage which pinned him, finding that his armor had protected his body against most things, but it had done comparatively little to shield him from the impacts he had suffered during the crash. That being the case, however, he had to admit that he was very lucky to be alive. And
yeah, you are. I think maybe Jevona must have protected you guys with her psychic abilities, like making some sort of bubble shield or something. I don't know. But yeah, you guys are lucky. Well, you are lucky. I don't know about your mother. I don't know about Jevona.
And that was luck that he soon discovered was not shared by everyone else. Kombirr felt his heart freeze in his chest as his eyes looked up to see the bloody remains of his mother.
No!
Her body pummeled and twisted, her armor having been far less able to resist than Kombirr's own. Panic flooded his veins in a cool, soul-crushing rush. He crawled over to her, frantic and suddenly unheeding of his own injuries. No, no, no! He begged, but he had no gods to hear him, and none did as he cradled her shattered body.
Kombirr lost his dad, and now he's losing his mother. Now he's lost his mother. Oh gosh.
Her neck was clearly broken. Her skull caved in on one side. Unlike Kombirr, she had not been able to get her helmet on in time. He clutched her.
What do you mean she was not able to get a helmet on in time? She should have had her helmet on the moment she flew her ship. What are you doing without your helmet on? It's like getting into a car without your seatbelt.
To him, shaking, sobbing into the moist confines of his armor, tears raining into it and filtered out by the helmet's internal drain. He held her as though he could somehow pull her out of death's maw, reverse time, and rip them back into the sky before they had been shot down. But, of course, this was impossible. And more, the horrid truth sank its teeth into him as reality dragged him forward. The wreckage shook and trembled around him, and Kombirr slowly became aware of the sounds of battle being waged just outside and around it. Had they been there all along, or were they just recently arrived? The Axumite could not tell one way or the other, but decided that the last thing he wanted to do was die here as well. He carefully laid Venora's body down amidst the remains of the ship, closing her eyes and crossing her hands over her chest, taking one last moment to mourn his mother before forcing himself to move on. "Goodbye, Mom," he whispered, barely able to keep himself together through the words, turning away before he collapsed again.
Oh gosh.
He was not looking forward to seeing what was left of Jevona, but he knew he could not leave without at least checking on her first.
She'll be fine. I thought maybe she'll create like a bubble, psycho bubble protecting you guys, but no. No, she did not.
Though she had been the least armored of all of them. What he found in place of what he expected stole the breath out of his lungs. Jevona was curled up, eyes closed, arms hugging her knees as she floated in the air.
I'm not surprised. Selfish.
Around her in a rough sphere was the crumpled and repelled pieces of various ship debris, which had threatened to crush her. The woman at its center, however, appeared untouched. Jevona? Kombirr asked hesitantly. Her eyes flashed open, and as they did, the effect seemed to suddenly end, floating pieces of metal and wreckage suddenly falling around her, as did she herself, collapsing with a surprised squeak from her place in the air and into the flattened seats beneath her. Kombirr scrambled forward, reaching her wavering form and helping her sit upright. Holy criffing criff! Jevona? By the many moons of Viego, how is this possible? Kombirr said, half elated, half disbelieving. Her eyes seemed to finally focus on his helmet, and she smiled up at him, herself happy to see he had survived the crash.
Yuck.
I prayed for aid, and my gods have sent it,
she said feebly, having trouble concentrating, a trickle of bright red blood rolling down from her nose. Kombirr felt more chills cut through him, realizing that she was not as unharmed as she first appeared, and carefully gathering her up in his arms, again ignoring his own pain. Come on, I'm getting us out of here. He grunted as he picked his way across the wrecked cockpit and into the twisted remains of the rear corridor. Jevona nodded weakly and closed her eyes, quickly falling from the conscious world, feeling quite literally burnt out. Kombirr laid her down in the passageway, leaving her only to go and retrieve the case which contained his rifle, getting out and loading the rounds he had left into it. When he came back, he determined he could not carry her and wield the weapon at the same time, and approached the door without her, intent on clearing it before approaching with her in tow. As he made his way through the short, sparking corridor, pushing dangling wires aside and stepping carefully over split floor panels and broken grates, he became aware of a sound. It was an odd, scraping, grinding noise that got louder and louder the closer he came to the doors. Suddenly, those wide, unfolding gates of Durasteel were torn entirely off,
Prepare for battle.
yanked free by chains which had been hauled upon with an incredible force. He fell away, almost thrown back by the force of his shock, and scrambled out a hasty retreat on his elbows and heels as the young Axumite fumbled with his rifle. A spray of bright las beams seared the air over his head as guardsmen from outside fired into the tilted wreckage. And had Kombirr still been standing, he would have been victim to most of them. Following that volley, 4 men charged the entrance, each of them dressed in glossy red and black suits composed of some kind of rubberized material, and each hefting a bayoneted gun. Kombirr snapped off a shot from his ancient Ripper rifle, and the spike it fired scored dead center down the passageway, puncturing and throwing back 3 of the 4 men with ludicrous ease. The old Mandalorian weapon tossed the soldiers away like weighted harpoons, throwing the Imperials even as they began to disintegrate into ashes from where they had been wounded. But one yet remained, and he seemed not to mind the fate of his fellows in the least as he angled his rifle down and speared heated agony across Kombirr's body. The advanced armor once more saved his life, reducing what would have been a myriad of fatal wounds to several first and second degree burns scattered over his chest and stomach. He hissed in pain, but that did not stop him from reorienting his long gun barrel and firing his next shot, which flew wide as the Imperial soldier kicked the barrel high, jerking the whole gun out of Kombirr's hands. Moving with the instincts of a Force sensitive, Kombirr did not even hesitate, reaching down with his now free right hand and snagging his blaster pistol out from its holster at his side, all the while clamping around the legs of the faceless Imperial with his own and rolling. The maneuver threw the soldier down to the ground just as Kombirr drew his sidearm, twisting to shoot at the imp who had fallen on top of him. His shot scorched and punctured the man's left hand, forcing the fully suited soldier to relinquish his gun as he used his remaining hand to grab Kombirr's weapon, wrestling with him, both men grunting and gasping as they fought for control of the pistol. But even one-armed, the Imperial soldier was exceptionally strong, and Kombirr found himself losing the contest. He elbowed the imp with the hard end of his armored arm, connecting with the glossy visor of the enemy's hazmat-like suit, leaving a long, thin crack along it. Kombirr grit his teeth and hit him again and again, crying out in frustrated rage as his fingers were pried away from his blaster. He triggered the safety on the weapon just before he relinquished it.
Good.
Pulling himself close to the dark form above him and reaching to grab the Imperial's sidearm. The imp growled an inhuman noise of triumph as it wrenched the gun forward, pressing it against Kombirr's stomach and pulling the trigger. The blaster did nothing.
Safety.
Its safety glowing instead as Kombirr elbowed him one more time in the face, shattering the panel of hardened glass there, revealing reddened monster's eyes.
Yeah, probably you shouldn't have done that to him. He's going to be terrified by his own look. He's what did AFanWithTooMuchTime call this regiment again? I forgot the name. Is it Carcosa? Yeah, I think it's the Carcosa, right? Yes.
The imp reared away, a muffled howl tearing out of him in fury. The movement allowing Kombirr to yank free the soldier's own gun, firing the last pistol he now held clutched in his hand, shooting.
I'll have to double check. Maybe it's not the Carcosa. Yeah, I'll have to double check. Yeah.
From the hip and into the inhuman Imperial's partially revealed face. Brains burnt to a crisp. The Imperial stumbled and fell back off of Kombirr, revealing in the process of his collapse that the Axumite was far from done with the fight. A large shadow loomed tall over the light of the outside, blocking the way with her hissing, powered armor. Kombirr flinched back as she stomped into the cramped place, the Imperial Priestess of War hefting a bulky weapon. She growled something as a pilot light flicked on at the end of the huge alien gun, and Kombirr had just enough time to shield himself with his arms before a storm of fire was expelled out towards him. The heat scorched him, but though it hurt like a sunburn, it was not half as bad as he had expected.
Man, that armor's quite good.
Opening his eyes, he saw why, as Jevona stepped over his prone body, suddenly risen once more and extending her hand out as her power split and repelled the jets of hungry flame.
Oh, okay, Jevona. Now you can do that, huh? Now you can, project a shield to protect the man that you love. But you could not do it to protect the mother of the man that you love.
Sweat poured off her head as small burns began to form all across her reaching arm. And without gawking for too long, Kombirr reoriented his stolen las pistol and fired it into the muzzle of the flame-throwing weapon. The Imperial sister spat a curse in her language, ceasing her assault and contemptuously tossing the wounded flamer aside, moments before it combusted, coating half her armor in oily tongues of persistent fire, none of which seemed to affect or bother her at all as she withdrew a power maul from her belt. With a snap of her wrist, its haft extended down, its round, spiked head sparking eagerly. Kombirr felt his face drain of all blood as the woman approached, his counterfire pinging and burning ineffectively off her armored body. She kicked him hard, knocking all of the air out of his lungs and bruising his ribs as she raised her power maul to strike Jevona. The insane sister of the Imperial faith wholly focused on her now. The bald woman recoiled in sudden fear, extending both hands to shove the encroaching enemy away.
Jeans de la filth.
But as the invisible force hit the Imperial sister, the boots of her armor sparked and coursed with magnetic power and held her fast to the floor, allowing her to continue her approach.
Do it, sister. Do it.
Kombirr had blots and spots in his eyes as he scrambled with one arm, trying to reach for his rifle while his other fired wide, ineffective shots from the las pistol still in his other hand.
Stay out of this, Kombirr. Stay out of this. She needs to go.
But neither of them could do anything to stop what came next. As quick as lightning, a radiant flash cut across the scene, the spark of a power weapon being deflected, lighting the space. The smell of burning flesh and ceramite filling the air in the aftermath. A shining blade of light, emerald cast and glowing, scythed through the midsection of the attacking sister of battle. Her descending weapon parried by another blade, a short sword of blue light.
Is it a Jedi? Blue light.
Growling as she falls, the Imperial is torn in half and thrown against the wall, her upper body landing right beside Kombirr. The imp slumps, dropping her mace, but with her other hand she withdraws a wide cylinder, hooking a finger from her newly freed weapon-bearing hand through the metal pin at the top.
Do it. Do it, sister. Just do it.
Kombirr's eyes widened to the size of plates as he watched her tense to activate the grenade.
Kombirr, if you can't get out of this, I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. But she has to go. She has to go.
Only to then watch her hand be severed just as she pulled, her wrist falling away from her arm. As the blue blade of light cut through it, the green blade cleaving the woman's helmed face in half and ending her struggle. The figure who rose from the strike wiped his wide, bald head with his free hand, sighing heavily as he retrieved the grenade, shaking the severed, armored limb free, pulling the pin with his thumb and tossing the explosive outside. The two humming lightsabers, long green and short blue, held in his other two hands.
Is this a patriarch? No. No. It's a Primus, right? Oh, okay. So, yeah, the Gene Stealer cult is still well and alive on Axum. It wasn't just that one Tyranid form that we saw fighting against the Canonist Superior. Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. Yeah, this is definitely a Primus.
He was dressed in a motley of armor, some pieces scavenged from the Imperials, other parts scavenged from the city or the Republic. His face was strongly built, handsome despite his hairlessness and the scaly crest which rested at its center.
And he has what, 2-3 lightsabers? Crazy. Gonna be like General Grievous here.
But his most notable features were composed of or on his 3 arms. Not 2 or 4, but 3. 2 limbs grew out of one shoulder on his right side, and those seemed almost human, though they were armored in a thick, pale purple carapace which reached from under his sleeves to his wrists, bony extensions reaching as far as the man's knuckles. His left arm was singular, yet somehow far less human than the limbs opposite it. Thick with pulsating alien muscles, and even more armored than his other arms, his left hand ended not in a 5-fingered humanoid appendage, but instead terminated in a 4-fingered claw which was tightly wrapped around the handle which sported the short blue blade. The green blade was held in one of his more humanoid limbs, and with the remaining one he reached down, taking Kombirr by the arm and hefting him up. Kombirr rose on shaky feet, coughing roughly, chest aching as he did.
Easy there. Check yourself for broken ribs before we go any further.
The bald, 3-armed man said, clapping Kombirr's shoulder as the grenade he had tossed outside thundered, the voices of several wounded Imperials joining it. His face was aged, but not quite old, yet his pale brown eyes were worn with experience, and his face projected a leader's understanding. Kombirr...
Okay. Jevona is the magus, right? And I think this is the Primus. So where is the patriarch of this cult? Where is that alien? Where is that Tyranid? This is bad. This is really, really bad.
Nodded without a word, taking those moments just to pull air back into his recently reinflated lungs. While he did that, the newcomer turned away and moved swiftly to Jevona's side, the woman already smiling before he turned to her and jumping for joy into his arms. The man carefully catching and embracing her, watchful of where he angled the lightsabers he held as he did. "Bathrazan!" she exclaimed, voice overflowing with elation as he spun her in his arms, pressing her head against his, tears beginning to run down her face.
This is a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Yes, it's me, little broodkin. It's all right. It's going to be all right.
He cooed, bringing her around and back to her feet, patting and stroking her back with his free hand as she collapsed into him and wept out of sheer relief. "I'm sorry for leaving the hideout. I didn't tell them anything about..." she began to say, but he shushed her again.
It's all okay. We are here for you. We could never abandon you.
The newcomer comforted, holding her tight. But the others, the Imperium..." she began to say, pulling away somewhat as she did.
Jevona, all that matters is that you are safe,
he said.
Liquai, Jalsop, and myself. None of us are as important as you are. My greatest fear was that I would not reach you in time. With the force required to rescue you, it is a boon and blessing from the gods that you are whole and safe again.
Jevona smiled, rubbing her face against his hand as he ran it along her cheek, closing her teary eyes for a moment before opening them again and looking towards Kombirr. "It's all thanks to him," she said, indicating towards where the Axumite was recovering his rifle, groaning as he bent over and began to check the damage to the old gun. She smiled fondly, and in a way that Bathrazan knew well enough.
Yuck! Blech.
He turned to follow her eyes and smirked, though not unkindly.
Then I will need to introduce him to the others. If you have chosen him, then he will have a high place among us.
Oh no. Oh no. And since Kombirr is now vulnerable, I would say, emotionally vulnerable. His dad is gone, his mother's gone, and the only person he has in his life right now is this Jevona lady. I think we've lost him.
He said more softly. Jevona blushed and looked down, but suddenly catching what he had said, looked back up suddenly.
You nasty, tyrannid filth. Nasty.
The others, did they all come?
Jevona asked, surprised. Bathrazan smiled a wide, toothy grin and nodded his large, aged head.
Oh yes, Josop brought them all. All the new converts and many, many more besides. Jaw wants to use them to completely destroy the Imperials on this planet.
He said, souring slightly at the end.
And you? What do you want now?
She would ask him. Bathrazan straightened with a sigh and began to face Kombirr, readying to welcome him more formally as he sensed the Axumite would soon be joining his family.
You know me, Jevona. I am a preserver. I just want to save those I can and get them away from the death camps. Like you. And maybe like him too.
Yeah, definitely I think we've lost Kombirr. He's lost to us. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Bang. Who in here trying to start a riot? Who in here trying to start a riot? Who in here trying to start it?
Who that flying in the air? Fool, that ain't no flying south, sir. I'm shooting webs like worldwide. Manhattan all the way to Yonkers. When they say Brooklyn, stand up. You better just fix your posture. And every hero needs his theme song. So
Who in here trying to
you ain't got a chance, boy. What you think? I'm doing everything but the kitchen sink. I try to be feeling in the neighborhood. I know all the little grannies wanna sip their tea. And here you come, all barging in. All ugly like a brown fur cardigan. We can skip the monologue and the arguing. I'm like,
Who in here trying to start a riot? Who in here trying to start a riot? Let's rock and roll. So high up, I can see the flow. Now he go. It's a play. It's a UFO. Find the foe. Let me know if you brought that action. It don't matter. Just let me know. No, I'm coming through with my crew to make a play. I don't need no super suit. I'm feeling brave. Don't be a hero. Turn around and walk away. Wait. Who in here trying to start a riot? Trying to start a riot.
General Grievous, you know, I was so entertained with that operation, with the Crimson Razors thinking that they're just gonna, you know, jump out, or should I say, drop out of the warp, you know, fire some psychonic torpedoes on the planet and then leave. They really thought that this was going to be a walk in the park. It wasn't. It wasn't. I really did enjoy that episode. Which episode was it again? I forgot right now. But I really did like that battle. What was that? What's happening? Oh gosh, Captain Frodan.
every day is like a sticky situation when evil's looking for a chance. And I know we are the newest generation. We got the power in our hands. Web slinging through the trenches.
I'm coming through with my crew to make a play. I don't need no super suit, I'm feeling.
When I say Brooklyn, stand up, you better just fix your posture. And every hero needs this theme song, so
Who in here trying to start a riot? Who in here trying to start a riot? Who in here trying to start it? Bang. Who in here trying to start it? Who in here trying to start it?
no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
You know, I even forgot about Maul and his brother. What was his name again? Savage, I think, or Savage. Yeah, I remember those two. Okay, yeah. Straight to the point. No extra sentences. No, it's just yes. Yes. Siege engines? I don't think I know what those are. Are they also like another form of Titan? Huh.
So we gonna stand up for justice. We gonna stand up for peace. And we gonna show them how you protest. We peaceful, but we changing the world.
Oh, that is so cute. Yes. Ask him how is he doing, Kubik. That's a good question. That is a very good question.
Against your brothers and sisters now. Our ancestors got it wrong. So let's stand up and make it right.
Good to hear. Farnus. I don't remember you, Farnus. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Aren't you with Nerva? I think it's that guy that was with Nerva, right? Farnus. I could be wrong about that, but let's see.
Farnus groaned feebly, wincing, head throbbing in the darkness.
Nerva.
He called through a scratchy, dry throat. He could still feel her vaguely behind him, but she was still and silent. The cockpit of the Knight had been crushed just as the Knight had been, the already cramped space crumpling until Farnus could barely move, and becoming deprived of all light. None of the controls he could reach were responsive to his touch.
Guys, if an Imperial Knight has been destroyed or it's heavily damaged, it can't move anymore, can the pilot still exist? Can the pilot still be alive and just be taken out from the Imperial Knight? Or is the Imperial Knight and the pilot conjoined into one being? Meaning if one dies, the other one dies as well. Or should I say, if the Knight dies, the pilot dies. Or if the pilot dies, the Knight dies. I'm just wondering about that.
And it took him what felt like hours to finally properly judge his own physical condition. He had hit his head hard, and was bleeding from a gash somewhere in his hair. He was constricted into a half-standing, half-sitting position which left him leaned far forward, his chest barely able to take a full breath in without touching the pushed-in blank screens and panels of the forward console. He was sure that all his toes were broken, maybe even more of his feet, but he could move them enough to judge that he was not pinched or stuck. There was not enough space for him to turn to closely examine Nerva, but after listening very closely and holding his own breath, he was sure he was able to confirm to himself that she was still alive, still breathing, just unconscious. That was the only bit of potentially good news he had, though, since, alive or dead, they were trapped by the closed, unpowered hatch of the Night Walker. After enough squirming, he was able to work his sidearm las pistol out of its holster, and managed to painfully haul himself all the way up to the closed door. The young guardsman felt around for anything he could use to manually open it, but nothing he pulled, twisted, or tugged on had any effect, and having felt around the rim of the doors, he doubted anything would. The Knight was crushed in around the door itself, and even if there was some kind of emergency release, it would not shock him at all if it simply would not function after all the damage the machine had suffered. He considered his weapon, wondering if there was some way to shoot himself out before laughing grimly at himself. Well, there was one way he could shoot his way out of this situation. Out of any and every situation, in fact, save the Emperor's judgment. But he was not eager to explore that option.
It's an option, but yeah, let's not talk about it.
Maybe if it seemed he would be consigned to starving to death in this darkness, but not yet. After all, he still needed to find out what happened to the two surviving members of his squad, needed to know if they had gotten Gala to the Medicae in time. It was as he was thinking, otherwise silent in the darkness, that he noticed the noise. A soft, distant tapping. At first, he just assumed it was something innocuous, just some part of the environment, but something about the steady yet irregular rhythm of the taps bothered him. They sounded almost like Morse code. His heart beat hard as he realized what they might be, his brain churning as he tried to decipher the metallic taps in the dark. He had a harder time hearing, despite being quiet, his heartbeat pounding in his ears, but soon he got enough to work out a small portion of the message. It was Morse code. Someone was trying to communicate with him. Where was the tapping coming from? Was it coming from outside the night?
Guys, I think we all need to learn Morse code. Just for emergency purposes, I think we do. I think I need to. I don't know when or how am I going to start, but yeah, I think Morse code is important. Who knows what might happen? I might be in a car crash and, I don't know, like the car's trapped under some rubble or another vehicle, and I'll have to tap and to say, hey guys, I'm here. But then also the person that's listening to me tapping must also understand what Morse code is. Okay, maybe it should be a curriculum in our schools. You know, we gotta learn Morse code. Yeah. I think it should be taught to everybody.
Biting his lip in excitement and nervousness, Farnus began to work out the whole message, which he soon realized was being endlessly repeated.
Alarming conditions detected. Is aid required?
Was the message. Taking a deep breath, Farnus composed his own message in his head and then, with the muzzle of his sidearm, tapped it out. Identify yourself, was what he sent.
This is Buffin 337.
Hey! Wait, weren't you inside the Imperial Knight with Nerva?
Loyal servant of the machine god.
Was the message he got back. Farnus was almost dizzy with elation, beginning to tap back another message soon afterwards, being forced to stop and start 2 or 3 times in his excitement. Aid required, trapped inside, tech priest critically injured, need help ASAP. He clinked out with his gun. There was a pause then, before some more tapping answered him.
Understood. Stand by. Now seeking nearest aid.
Farnus nodded in the dark, gasping his relief and tapping back one last message. Understood. Standing by. Hurry. He got no reply to that, which was much as he expected. However, he was not idle while he waited. He did not know how much he could realistically do in his current position, but he was intent on finding out. If his experience in the locked chimera had taught him one thing, it was that nothing was as suffocating as helplessness. Nerva had been doing the bulk of the work, had been protecting him, protecting the Canoness, protecting the Imperium itself. Now, some way, somehow, it was his turn. He felt a flush of shame fill him for a moment as he remembered his suicidal considerations, taken only moments before encountering Bofin. That's no way for a guardsman to think. He scolded himself in the darkness, gripping his weapon with a new conviction.
But it was just a thought. It was just a thought. It's not like you were going to act on it anytime soon. Yeah.
Would make sure they both got out of this mess. Farnus swore he would not rest until they were both back with the Imperium proper, and out of this metal tomb. He would do whatever he could, however he could, or he would perish in the attempt of it. And the first step to that was working out how to get out of here. It was his turn to stand, and with Bofin's help, he hoped he'd at least have the dignity to die standing, as opposed to locked in a dead mechanical demigod.
Hurry, Bofin.
Mace Windu stood within a tall spire, the room he now commanded having been converted into a forward command post from a hollow network media center. A hollow projection table, several stations, and many large pieces of communications equipment had been brought in and set up. He leaned over the table, viewing with clarity the battle now taking place in the crushed avenue leading up to the Basilica. The blue units of the 501st poured down like a purifying flood from the top of the crashed dreadnought, hitting all sides of the red-lit surviving Imperial forces just as the withdrawn troops who had surrendered the avenue suddenly returned, catching the Imperials between them. To add to that, crowds of yellow combatants were charging up from several of the larger adjoining roads. Axumite freedom fighters, from the looks of it, and they were hammering into the Imperials hard from 3 separate sides. Though one of these 3 mobs seemed far more effective than the others. He watched as it enveloped and devoured several Imperial forces which had managed to fight their way off the main road, cutting through their normally resilient defenses with speed. But it was not long before their canny enemy began some kind of effective recovery, the Basilica gates flying open as reserve soldiers poured out. lancing into groups of clones and rebels in order to extract those they could from the clutches of death. Windu helped to organize the counter-offensive from this omniscient position, but even so, the Imperial rescue team still managed to stall their advance long enough to rescue many otherwise doomed Imperial forces, all of them retreating into the gates of the Basilica compound. Mace ground his teeth together as he observed it. Despite their earlier bombardment, the walls still stood, and the grounds within them were heavily fortified. "Should we prepare our forces for an assault, General?" asked the clone commander who stood to Windu's right. He shook his head, looking at the trooper, one of Ayla's men, his armor chipped in some places, blackened in others. The room was mostly lit by the shine of computer consoles, and what sunlight managed to make it through the line of windows which created one wall of the room, most of them already cracked or partially shattered. The Jedi Master sighed heavily, leaning forward over the holographic battlefield and closing his eyes for a moment. "No, assaulting now will only bleed us even more. Find out if those Axumites have a leader, and get me in contact with them if they do. We need..."
Yeah, you're gonna meet the leader. You're gonna meet him. Samuel, I'm so surprised.
To coordinate with them if it is possible. Have our forces surround the Basilica. Either we are settling in for a siege, or we are containing them to the temple grounds until the rest of the Order arrives. Mace said, the clone saluting as the doors leading into the room slid open, permitting Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex to stride inside. The ex-Jedi stood straight, hands folded behind her back as her eyes met Windu's from across the hologram projecting table. Both warriors now marked by the battles they had endured. Rex himself was no less worse for wear, his armor chipped and singed in several places, a few flakes falling off as he snapped a crisp salute. "Commander Tano, Captain Rex, it's good to see you are both safe, and though your entrance was a bit dramatic for my tastes, I cannot argue with your results. Well done," he said, his face softening as he regarded the former Padawan.
Windu, just say thank you. Thank you and well done. That's it. That's all you have to say. Okay? Don't come here with your personal opinion. Oh, it was a bit too flashy, or oh no, you guys came in here too loud. No, I don't want to hear that. Just say thank you. And well done. That's it.
Seeing her now, Mace felt a pang of remorse for his and the Council's hasty decisions surrounding her trial. She had the makings of a true Jedi, strong in form and spirit, and that strength shone through now as she stood wreathed in the glory that came from being the one who rescued the entire assault. Ahsoka Tano, the ex-Jedi student of the Chosen One, still holding strong long after so many others within the Order had fallen or lost the strength to go on. He was coming to understand that her departure from the Order was a larger loss than he and the others had been willing to admit at the time, and one he hoped would prove ultimately temporary. "Same to you, Master Windu. I was afraid that seeing you here would mean that we had lost the shipboard contest, but it looks like most of the Order is still standing," she said, gesturing to the Jedi around them, many of whom were helping to coordinate the clones as they enveloped the Basilica. "We disabled their vessel, for the most part. Doing any more would have demanded a higher price than I was willing to pay. Besides, we may have come back with an even larger prize in the destruction of one ship. But never mind that for now. How are your men doing? I can see even from here that you are not without your own losses," said Master Mace Windu. Ahsoka nodded, and Rex stepped forward, projecting their numbers in a report displayed from his wrist-mounted holoslate. "Right you are, General. Taking the ship was no mean feat, and we did still lose some men in the crash. All in all, however, the 501st is ready to help reinforce a Star Corps wherever we are needed. Hope you don't mind, but some of our men have been a little proactive when it comes to upgrading our equipment. Many are using droidmen weapons we took while reclaiming the ship," the clone informed.
Droidmen weapon? Oh, this Qatari. Okay.
Mace nodded, waving his hand as though it were the essence of unimportant. "As long as they're still firing for our side, I don't care what guns your men use. We are currently moving to seal the Imperials inside their fortress while we wait for the other half of the Order to arrive. Once gathered, we will crush them with a single decisive strike. It will be over before they even know it has begun," said Mace. If that is the goal, then we should get some clones to work on sapping locations beneath the enemy temple. Here, here, and here would be the best locations, Ahsoka said, gesturing to a section of the massive city platform that held the basilica and its surrounding structures up. The image zoomed in to display the breaching locations she was indicating towards. When we attack the gates, most of their forces will be drawn to more defensible locations, and they may not notice holes appearing in these places. If we set up just right and time the intrusions with the main assault, we might be able to smuggle a battalion or two of clones behind their perimeter before they even realize there has been a breach, she advised. Mace looked on approvingly, rubbing his chin for a moment before giving her a sharp nod. That is good thinking, Commander. I'll get some clones on it as soon as I can. I assume some of your men would be up to it? Mace asked, and Ahsoka nodded, though her face scrunched with thought for a moment. We may want to recruit some of those civilian militias then, the young warrior added, zooming the display out and then pointing down into the holographic map at the yellow-colored forces. We may not otherwise have enough men to do it all. I agree my forces should set up the breaching locations, but if they do, there may not be enough of the 501st to completely seal in the enemy. However, if we can co-opt some of these rebel forces, then we should have more than enough to encircle them.
I tell you now, Samuel is going to jeopardize, is going to, kill this mission somehow, some way. He's going to make sure that his civilian army don't do as you guys command, and this entire operation is going to be a flop. But hey, we'll wait and see.
She said. Windu looked and nodded, but seemed a bit confused, brows scrunching at her words. I intend to look into that. However, I am perplexed by your concern. I know your forces were mauled by the Imperials in orbit, but do you really have so few men left under your command? The Jedi Master asked, the ex-Padawan nodding her head solemnly. Yes, the Imperial droidmen did not make it easy for us. On top of that, I'm forced to hold a portion of my forces back to guard our prisoners. She explained, causing Windu to raise his eyebrows. Prisoners? He asked. She nodded again, more forcefully. Of course, they aren't actually droids. Both on the ship and in our counter-assault on the main road, I've ordered my troops to use their stun setting to take as many prisoners as possible. Our recent offensive has racked up a pretty large prisoner count. She said,
Yeah, I remember. You resorted to stunning your enemies and to interrogate them instead of killing them. At the time, I didn't really agree with that, that decision. But it worked out for you because you got to gain information on your enemies. You got to understand them a bit better. Ugh. But I also don't really champion for killing unarmed people. I really don't. I only champion when those people are carrying weapons and they're shooting at you. And then you shoot back at them. And of course, you must kill them. But if they're not carrying any weapons, if they're surrendering to you, then yes, don't kill them. Definitely don't kill them. So yeah, these POWs, they need to be taken somewhere and be watched. I'm not sure where exactly. It's a tough situation out here. But they need to be put into some sort of prison. Yeah, I'm sure there's like prison cells here in Axum, right? There must be still some jail, incarceration system that still exists here. So yeah, just take them to those jails if it's possible. Yeah.
Said, crossing her arms lightly and sounding pleased with herself. Windu scowled softly and sighed much more heavily, shaking his head and rubbing his face with a thickly calloused hand. Ahsoka, we cannot contribute any more of our forces to secondary objectives at this time. Every trooper is needed to... Mace began to say. Secondary objectives? Ahsoka asked, speaking the words with a huff of humorless laughter, as though she could not believe what she was hearing. Yes, secondary objectives.
He said what he said. He's not changing on it.
Our primary objective is the subduing of the remaining armed and active Imperial forces on Axum. If we are to break through the Basilica's defenses, We need every Jedi and every trooper ready to do their part, not guarding an expanding pool of war criminals. He said sternly,
Master, how are we going to come to a reasonable understanding with these people if we do not even bother to take prisoners? More than half the intel I've gained on them came from one discussion I've managed to have with one of their priests. A priest I captured. Besides, what exactly do you want me to do with the prisoners I do have?
I think he wants you to kill them. Of course he won't say that. He won't say that.
Them go to rejoin the enemy?
she asked, shaking her head and crossing her arms more tightly. Obviously not, said Windu.
So what? Execute them? Defenseless prisoners? Do I even need to remind you that doing that is not our way?
Ahsoka snapped. Look, Tano, just do not take any more prisoners. We can recover any wounded that survived the battles or any who surrendered to us, but
Did he just say Tano? He just said Tano without the Ahsoka. Whew, Windu. Oh my gosh.
outside of that, no more. That is an order, the Jedi Master said in a low voice, his patience grinding thin.
But,
Ahsoka began, this is not a debate. You have your orders, Commander. I expect you to follow them. He almost yelled, slamming his fist down on the table and causing the holograms to flicker. Ahsoka flinched back and then scowled angrily. She grit her teeth and turned back towards the door with an indignant posture, walking.
I hear what Master Windu is talking about. I do. I understand what he's also talking about. I do. Yeah. It's another hard situation. You know? Like the time when Master Windu was talking about, getting some sort of important artifact that would bring the Imperium of Man to the table, to the negotiating table. And Ahsoka Tano was talking about, freeing those people who were in those concentration camps. And it was a hard decision right there, because the military objective would secure Axum, but also securing the civilians or rescuing the civilians is the right thing to do, especially if you have the military equipment and resources to do so. So it's another tough situation, difficult decisions have to be made here. Yeah.
Walking away. Where are you going? Mace called at her back. To help my men in securing the Central Avenue, sir, she said over her shoulder before slamming the door button, causing it to hiss and slide open, permitting her to exit.
Come on, Rex,
she snapped. The clone captain saluted to Mace Windu once more, before pursuing Ahsoka out the door, the two walking out beside a third party that was entering just as they left.
And you want her back in the order? She's not coming back. She's not coming back. As long as you are there, I don't think she's ever coming back. She doesn't want to be dealing with you every day. Looking at your face every day? Hearing you say that she's just Tano. Not even Jedi Knight Tano. No, it's Tano. What are you doing here, Tano? Go do that, Tano. Oh.
This newcomer was escorted by two clones to either side, the odd alien leering at Ahsoka, who cringed away from the creature as she passed, soon out of sight.
Oh my gosh, it's another one of those Primus, right? Gosh. That means the Galactic Republic's two enemies are here, and they don't even know, because it's Samuel, who's a spy, and now it's also a Gene Stealer cult member. I'm assuming it is a Primus, who's also arrived to talk with Master Windu.
I heard you were looking for me. Well, look no further, Master Jedi.
Hissed this new figure who sauntered into the room.
Jedi.
Mace blinked, The man who slid into his command center was unlike any being he had ever seen before. Tall and straight-backed, with a large bald head, intelligent yellow eyes, and a handsome, if stretched, face, this newcomer strode as though he were the one granting an audience to the Jedi, and not the other way around. Most shockingly of all was the man's 3 arms, his 2 right limbs appearing humanoid, whereas the left was composed of an enormous 4-digited taloned claw. "I'm sorry? Have we met? I don't think I'm looking for anyone like you at the moment," Windu said, straightening to meet the man.
I'm the leader of the rebels. I could have sworn you wanted to see me to coordinate. Isn't that right?
The man asked with a serpent's smile, coming to lean against the table. Mace nodded, quirking his eyebrows. "You are the leader of all the rebels?"
No, just a part of the rebels. The Gene Stealer cult rebel part, yeah.
He asked. "Not quite," was the answer Mace got, but the rough rasp came not from the alien Windu had been talking to, but rather from yet another newcomer who was being escorted in by 2 more clones. This newly arrived man was huge, over 6 feet of hard, obvious muscles, wrapped in green work fatigues and a black trench coat which was torn, singed, and still smoking slightly. The black-haired man stared forward with hard, dark eyes, a burning cigarette held clenched between his pursed lips as he spoke out one side of his mouth. Unlike the rebel who was already in the room, this man seemed entirely human, though no less confident in his demeanor.
Was Samuel a commissar before? I'm wondering. I mean, the black coat. I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, maybe he was a commissar before he became a spy. Yeah.
"Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, is that right?" the man asked as he came to stand beside the table, looking down at the hologram projection that stood between them. "Close. Master Kenobi is currently in the field. I am Jedi Master Mace Windu." "And you are?" Mace said, hiding any sign of annoyance as he controlled the growing headache he felt pounding in his head. "Samael, I'm leading this group down here," said the burly man, pointing down towards the smallest of the rebel mobs, which had gathered towards the southern end of the battlefield. Mace nodded, noting the man's odd accent and soldier's bearing, before turning towards the other who had come before him. "That is good to know. Here I was about to ascribe all these groups to one authority," Windu said pointedly. The alien shrugged dismissively, walking around the holotable and indicating towards the hologram of the battle. He gestured with his black talons towards the yellow group of rebels which had been destroying the Imperials they encountered with unusual effectiveness.
You know, Samuel has to be really calm and just control his urge to kill this Gene Stealer cult member right there in this control room. He has to be so calm and collected. Just pretend like this creature is not there. Talking, walking around. Oh.
This is my group. I cannot speak for the others. That's the truth, I swear it.
He confessed mockingly. Mace looked down and scowled somewhat as he noticed which group the man laid claim to and what this group was doing. "Good. Then as our first order of business, we can have you order these people to pull back. If they keep charging up towards the Basilica, they are going to run head first into the Imperial weapons batteries. Those weapons will..." Mace began to say, pointing at the advancing yellow forces who were even then chasing the retreating tail of the Imperium up towards the temple grounds.
"We'll do nothing we cannot overcome if your Jedi warriors rip them off the walls or fall upon them with your power swords."
The alien man interjected in the midst of Windu's sentence.
"Now is not the time to hold back. The Imperials are off balance, demoralized. We need to strike them now, relentlessly and without pause. We need to rub them out until they no longer exist.
Mace raised his hand to stall him, looking towards the human counterpart to the alien rebel. "What do you think?" he asked. The man shook his head, swiveling a line of smoke in the air as he did, reaching up to take the smoldering tube from his mouth as he spoke. "We press on now, we might win, but the cost will be massive. Even if you knock out those emplacements, this is a layered wall with pillboxes lined all throughout. The kill zones on these segments will drown us in weapons fire and our own blood," the human rebel pointed out, awkwardly waving at the holotable until it caught his movements and zoomed out, displaying the entire starburst-shaped structure of the walls. Mace nodded and turned to the alien leader, gesturing towards the holographically highlighted defensive measures which dotted the entirety of the spiked configuration. "Attacking now will only mean bleeding ourselves on their defenses. I have around 2,000 more Jedi Knights en route. They will be here in as little as 6 hours. I intend to wait for them before making any offensive moves against that fortress," Mace explained, firm but calm. The human adopted a thinking posture, but nodded his head somewhat while the three-armed man hissed in obvious displeasure.
Yeah, I agree with Windu, like waiting for at least those 6 hours until reinforcements come, because the Imperium of Man forces, I don't think they're going to venture out of their positioning currently. You know, I don't think there's a lot of them left, and whatever left is going to be focusing on defensive tactics and fortifying the Basilica with whatever they have left. So yeah, I think they'll be waiting for you guys to come towards them, to come to them. Yeah. So wait for those 6 hours, wait for that reinforcement, and then you guys can all fight together. However, it seems like the Genestealer cult Primus here is not entertaining this plan one bit.
"Sounds like a sound." Samael started to agree.
I will not give them rest. Their death is within our grasp. Yes, we shall all bleed, but our blood will drown them. Don't you see?
The odd alien insisted. "Listen, Mr. Mace began to say.
Jolsop.
He snapped out in response. "Jolsop. If you choose to attack them now, you will attack them alone, and you will not succeed. Calm down and give your people time to rest and regroup. When they attack again, they will do so with the Republic's full support. But that time is not now," Windu explained calmly.
Foolish! I've already ordered my broodkin to assault the walls. Cutting them back now will only mean taking fire as we retreat.
The alien man contested. "Still less losses than you'll take if you commit," the human leader added.
We are at war. Losses are inevitable. All that matters is that we earn something for those whom we lose. Retreating earns us nothing.
Jopol or Jolsop, yeah, him. He sounds like he wants to just burst out of his body, you know. Every time I hear him, you know, he just sounds like he wants to burst out of his body. This is some good voice acting here. AFanWithTooMuchTime, yeah, really, it's convincing.
Jolsop snapped back. "Losing everything to win a battle is foolish if we intend to win the war," Windu interjected. "Let us not be wasteful with the lives under our command. Wait," he said, suddenly pausing, eyes darting as a subtle sense brushed across his mind.
Winning this battle could well start the winning of this war.
Jolsop began to say, cut off a moment later by a frantic wave of Windu's hand. The Jedi Master craned his head as if trying to listen, and several of the other Jedi stopped working as well, suddenly paused and silent as they looked about. A few moments passed, before suddenly, Windu's eyes snapped wide open, his hands extending out to cast a sudden expansion of the Force between all the men present around the table, throwing himself and the two others away. Almost the very instant after he did this, the roof above them caved in under the force of a shaped charge, the explosion shattering the holotable into pieces. The clones and Jedi in the room snapped around to face the sudden disturbance.
Somehow this is Samuel's doing. He must have said, hey guys, I need a kill squad to come to this, Republic headquarters just to kill everybody here. I'll be there. I'll be helping you guys out. I am telling you. Samuel orchestrated this.
Falling straight into their assailants' hands as flash grenades fell out from the smoking hole above them. Each one held and cooked to detonate just as they reached the halfway point between the ceiling and the floor. The bright flashes blinded the unprepared inhabitants of the command center as men and more grenades came down. The round weaponized canisters hit the ground alongside the boots of the men who had dropped them, spewing disorienting smoke into the air as the blinded Jedi and clones tried to blink vision back into their eyes. Meanwhile, all around them, more ceiling charges exploded, all following a similar pattern, dropping smoke grenades from the newly created holes before following them up rapidly with the visored soldiers of the Tempestus Scions. Their aided sight cut through the smoke they deployed into, and their advanced training and lethal armaments did the rest, firing through the haze and cutting down most of the Jedi and clone troopers in the room. None but the very best survived the initial attack, and nearly all were forced to dive behind whatever cover they could manage to find for themselves. Mace Windu, however, sought no such protection. He didn't even draw his blade, diving straight into the attacking Scions with his bare, force-wreathed fists. Mace was a master among masters, and had already had clone medics remove the most troublesome of his new metallic welts, blocking out what pain remained as he pumped his fist into them.
Whoa, Windu? Master Windu, how frustrated are you? Oh yeah, AFanWithTooMuchTime did say that he has a headache. Yeah, so the guy's really angry right now.
Each strike was like the blast of an autocannon loaded with armor-piercing rounds, save for the fact that Windu's limb was far larger than any bullet those guns fired. His knuckles blew bloody chunks out of the soldiers he encountered, their fellows maneuvering to swathe him in lethal crossfire, but never moving quite fast enough. Yet, despite the inability of the central squad of Scions to gain control over their engagement with the Jedi Master, the other breaching squads and those who followed in after them made short work of most who remained, something Windu was powerless to stop. The Jedi were well trained in how to deflect incoming projectiles, and indeed, the Imperial lasboat was just as susceptible to an intercepting lightsaber blade as any shot taken from a blaster. And yet they moved much faster, throttling through the air at the speed of lethal light, as opposed to the much slower pace the bolts lobbed at Jedi from blasters moved at, requiring highly honed reflexes and precognitive mastery from those who sought to block any volley coming from even a single source. And
I think that one of the only Jedi that I know that can successfully block and redirect lasgun fire is Ahsoka Tano. You know, she really knew how to do that quite well when she was aboard the Separatist vessel. Maybe even Anakin. Well, okay, I'm not sure about Anakin, but Ahsoka Tano definitely. Yeah, I remember when she was going aboard that vessel with the 501st, and you know how good she defended herself against all the Skitarii as well as other auxiliary forces that were aboard the vessel. Yeah.
Each Jedi and clone found themselves not randomly targeted and shot, but rather the victims of systematic cross and focus fire. The effects were nearly decisive, with all the clones and most of the Jedi dying in the room within moments, with only a few significant holdouts.
The human rebel leader, Samael, rolled behind cover and barely managed to evade the sprays of lethal death coming from the few stormtroopers who had homed in on him, while the alien rebel proved far more proactive. Jolsop bounded off the floor in an instant recovery after he was repulsed from the center of the room, his movements smooth and predatory like a Nexu unleashed in the middle of the fight. Where Mace used the Force to enact his impossible physical feats, Jolsop relied on pure foreign physicality. Alien muscles pulsated, carapaced flesh swelling and contracting as he ran through the smoke, his inhuman senses making up for any mundane eyesight the obstructions denied him. With the precision and speed of a striking hawk, the gene-thieving alien plunged its clawed hand through the armored chest of the nearest scion, ripping through the gun the soldier raised to shield himself as though it were but paper. His gore-laden talons exited in a torrent of red, ripping free the Imperial's still beating heart and throwing it into the face of the next, blinding the scion just as he lined up shots on the rebel leader. Together with the Jedi Master and the few other survivors of the command post, Jolsop began to swiftly return to the scions the death they had been so eagerly dealing. And in moments, more clones and Jedi were shoving into the room, weapons out and looking for targets. The scions and their Tempestor Prime were being boxed in, the Imperials backing away towards the wide windows which formed one wall of the room, firing in desperate sprays of strobing lasbolt as they tried to stop the two foes who were tearing through their lines like tinfoil. Moving swiftly, they put their backs to the glass, and then, surprisingly, threw themselves out. Glass shattered, fragments reflecting the sun as they toppled from the side of the endlessly tall spire.
I guess the mission has failed and now they're in a tactical retreat. Yeah.
Mace and several Jedi and troopers running to the jagged windowsills to see with their own eyes what the Imperial commandos would do. Their heads were forced back into the building. A few clones and one Jedi not withdrawing fast enough, craniums and faces bursting apart in volleys of light. The imps had fallen only a short distance into the waiting, open side doors of 4 impossibly parked Torox Primes, the wheeled vehicles adhering magnetically to the side of the building. It was from their turret guns that the lethal covering fire came, the wall-crawling vehicles remaining for only as long as it took to secure their passengers before driving off at a furious speed across the side of the building. Clones protruded out to fire at their backs, and other Jedi began to scatter to give chase through the spire, calling for more troops as the smoke in the destroyed command post leaked out through the windows and into the burning sky. Mace stood, face hard and lined with sweat, heart pounding in his chest as he looked out, watching the Imperials flee. He stepped away, glass crunching under his boot as he turned, raising an eyebrow as he regarded the alien leader of the Axumite rebels. His body revealed more and more as the smoke vacated the room. He lay upon the shard-studded ground, his face fixed in a vicious grin, gore-colored claws stretched out before him. Jolsop was dead, having been...
I know who it was. Samuel took that opportunity when everybody was focused on the Tempestor Scions, going down to their vehicles. He eliminated the Genestealer Cult Primus. Yeah. Oh, what's his name again? Jolsop. Yeah, him. Nice going. I'm happy for you there, Samuel. Thank you.
Being killed just before the end of the engagement, but not by any of the Imperial agents who had assaulted them. At least, not the ones in the armor. The strange alien man had a large molten wound cutting down through his spine. A wound which looked suspiciously like that left by a lightsaber, or something similar. Turning to face the room fully, Mace could see much being revealed, but even after all the smoke had cleared, one feature remained absent. The other rebel leader, the human Samael, was gone. Had he fled in the chaos? Run away during the attack? It was a reasonable assumption, Mace knew. His eyes swung slowly back to the dead alien leader whom he had been fighting alongside only a few moments ago, who had died right under the Jedi Master's nose. It was also reasonable to assume that the obvious Imperials were not the only Imperials that were there. Troopers began to move through the room, securing what they could, beginning to replace most of what was there, and nervously watching Master Windu as he approached the dead rebel, and kneeled by his side, looking more closely at his wound. While it superficially resembled a lightsaber's cut, it was obvious to the Master that this damage did not come from any typical lightsaber configuration. The burn was almost jagged, while remaining mostly precise, as though the blade had been flickering and fluctuating when the blow had been struck. Windu...
Yeah, it was definitely a form of power sword that Samuel had.
Stood back up, frowning deeply. How had the Imperials discovered this location? How had they managed to scout it and strike so effectively without being caught or noticed at some point?
The person that you're looking for was so close. You were literally breathing in the same air with that person in that command room. That's how close that person was to you. Yes.
More and more, the evidence was pointing in one direction. Trooper, locate the other rebel leader, the man named Samael, and bring him to me, Master Windu said, snapping the order off to one of the nearby clone commanders. The man nodded. Aye, will do, General. What are we bringing him in for? He asked. Mace Windu shook his head, rubbing his chin as he sighed heavily out from his nose, turning to face the broken and now ruined holotable. Nothing yet. I've just got a bad feeling about him.
If travel is searching, and home has been found, I'm not stopping. I'm going hunting. I'm the hunter.
She got eyes like a neon sign, stare you down and make you cry. An iron will and the thirst to kill. You wanna see her stuff, she gonna show you. Her poison lips with the metal grips. She gonna pull you in and bleed you dry. She never miss with the electric kiss. You think you're tough, she gonna own you. I fell for the devil's daughter. I jumped in, yeah, I drank the water. Tell me, doctor, can you fix my brain? 'Cause everyone says I'm insane. Help me lose you down till you turn to dust. I say your name and tell you lies. Sharp as a knife, I cut you down to size. You could try to run, she gonna find you. You never see you coming, so leave the engine running. She just a criminal, she right behind you. I fell for the devil's daughter. I jumped in, yeah, I drank the water. So tell me, doctor, can you fix my brain? Cause everyone that says I'm insane, now me loosen this ball and chain. There's no use talking, I'm a dead man walking. I was thirsty and I wanted more. Then she found me with the rebel soul. Tried to warn me and I should have known. There's no use talking, I'm a dead man walking. So lock me up, but throw away the key. Cause I need shelter from the things I've seen. Save me from this lethal company, so I can breathe. You never see you coming, so leave the engine running. She's just a criminal, she right behind. So tell me, doctor, can you fix my face? Cause everyone says I'm insane. This ball and chain, there's no use talking, I'm a dead man. You don't have to be alone all by yourself. Tired of doing things just to save your mental health. You made a wish and then you lost it down to wishing well. But when you're with me, there's no need to be. So tell me, is there somewhere else that you wanna go? Cause you've been running round in circles, stuck in slow-mo. I've got that feeling that you really wanna hit the door. If you lost the fight, then let's win the war. When you're tired of fighting and you gotta run, hop right in, sit shotgun, I'm driving, I'll be your protector. Who's gonna be there when everything is tumbling down? Who's gonna be there when you fall to keep you off of the ground? I'll be your shelter, they'll never get you. So stay with me, yeah, and I'll be your... No, it ain't easy to survive up in these city streets. Looking for someone to help you when you scrape your knees. Taking too many punches, now it's getting hard to breathe. I'll be your reason, so you can believe. Are you waiting for someone? Just hold on, here I come to fix when you're undone. Now tell me when you're tired of fighting and you gotta run, hop right in, sit shotgun, I'm driving, I'll be your protector. Who's gonna be there when everything is...
Alright, guys, that is it with Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, episode 37, Hidden Hunters, made on the AFanWithTooMuchTime YouTube channel. AFanWithTooMuchTime, yes. I kind of sounded like I didn't say it properly there. Yes. Whew, alright. 37, episode 37. We got to see Sando again. It's good to see that he's well and okay. He's with his colleagues Upper and Hardway. They were enjoying the party that the civilians were having after their victory against the Imperium of Man forces. However, I said before that, they are celebrating a bit too early for my liking. They still have the Imperium of Man forces to contend with in the Basilica, so they should not be celebrating now. It's too early. Because now when they head off to battle again, I don't think they're going to be fully committed to it. They'll be still happy and joyful from the party they had, last night or something. So I don't think it was right for them to be partying right now. Yeah, I mean, even the Imperium of Man forces could do something while they're busy partying and enjoying their lives and dancing and everything. They could just plant bombs and blow up everything. So yeah, I just don't think it's the right time to party and to enjoy yourselves at this very moment. You still have a lot of work to do as the rebels of Axum, as well as the clones and the Jedi of the Galactic Republic. So yeah. Samuel, he's back. He's back with his associates. They've infiltrated the rebel forces. I should say that Samuel has become one of the leadership structures of the rebels, and definitely he's going to use the rebels as an advantage for the Imperium of Man and not for the Galactic Republic. As they initiate their plans to fight against the Imperium of Man, somehow he's going to sabotage it. I don't know how, but he's going to do it. I mean, he's already done it right now with the Tempestus Scions coming in there, shooting up all the Jedi and, trying to get attention away from what Samuel's going to be doing to the Gene Stealer cult Primus. What was his name again? Jalsop. Yeah, killing him. So definitely Samuel is going to find a way to sabotage this plan that Mace Windu and Ahsoka Tano is planning for their next assault on the Imperium of Man forces. General Secura is, should I say, she's having like PTSD, from all those imagery and memories that Tarwyla was, putting into her head, and she's really going through some sort of PTSD moment. And there's some sort of like cloud, some sort of reddish cloud that's producing lightning, like it's a storm. I'm sure that it is created by the warp, but I'm not sure who is doing it or how is that even coming into existence. I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully, Jedi Knight Secura can keep herself together and push through this situation that she's going through right now. And Kombirr and Jevona, yes, Kombirr is alive, but his mother is no longer with us. She has passed, and Jevona has found her family. She's found her family, and the family is now welcoming Kombirr to join them. So like I said before, I think we've lost Kombirr for good. I don't know, we'll see as time go by, but from what I can see right now, it doesn't seem like Kombirr is going to be able to escape from this family and just leave Jevona alone. Let her be killed by someone from the Imperium of Man, or I don't know, I know you can't do it because you like this lady or you see her as your friend, but honestly, you need to stay away from this person. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So, yeah. I still have hope for him, but it's very small. Yeah. Farnus, along with Nerva, are still stuck in the Imperial Knight. Boffin, luckily he was not in the Imperial Knight. I don't know why wasn't he in there with Nerva, because those two are very close. So yeah, surprising that he's out, and he's gonna go get some help to try and free Farnus as well as Nerva. I don't know how are they going to help them out, because all the Imperium of Man forces are now in the Basilica at this moment. So I don't know who's going to help them out. I'm not entirely sure about that. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what Boffin is able to do, or who is he going to call for help. We'll just have to wait and see. And yeah, like I said, with General Mace Windu, talking with Ahsoka Tano about prisoners of war. Mace Windu is not really interested in getting prisoners of war. He wants to kill these people whenever the chance avails itself, especially during the battlefield. He has no qualms in killing, no mercy for the Imperium of Man forces. While Ahsoka Tano thinks differently. If the combatants are not holding weapons, if they're not fighting back, if they're surrendering, we should give them that chance to surrender and become prisoners of war. And yeah, Mace Windu is not entertaining that right now. He needs everybody's hands on deck right now. He needs the clones, he needs the Jedi, all present and accounted for when making the final push to the Basilica. So I understand what Windu is saying, and I also understand what Ahsoka is saying. It is a very difficult, decision to make in this type of situation, because you need your forces, all of them, for this final push. But also, killing the defenseless, killing those who have surrendered is not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do at all. So yeah, tough choices to be made here. Okay guys, that is it with episode 37 of Hidden Hunters on Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, made on the YouTube channel AFanWithTooMuchTime. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I'll see you guys next week. Okay?